Hello, Dolphins fans. NFL free agency is coming up, and we have some very important news to share with you. We heard some good things and some bad. I'll tell you all about it, but first make sure you've hit the like button if you've been a true Miami Dolphins fan since the 70s. There are people here who were at the first game. It's great to see you still cheering. If possible, write something like this: "The Miami Dolphins live in my heart." Now for the news. Mike McDaniel's team has some serious work to do, especially on the offensive line, and with limited cap space, Chris Grier and the front office will have to make some tough decisions. Let's break it down and see what it means for the Dolphins as we approach March 10th, when the tampering period officially opens. First, let's talk about the biggest challenge Miami faces, the offensive line. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This is a critical issue for the Dolphins. We're looking at a team that has to figure out its left guard and right guard situation while also dealing with a salary cap situation that doesn't leave much wiggle room. It's not just about patching holes. Miami needs to find reliable, high-quality starters, and with their current financial constraints, that's easier said than done. Now, before we get into the specific names floating around in free agency, it's important to understand just how tight Miami's budget is. Yes, the Dolphins are in compliance with the cap, but when you factor in the money allocated to sign draft picks and other expenses, they're technically in the red. That means changes are coming, whether it's contract restructurings, player cuts, or even a retirement or two. Names like Bradley Chubb and Terron Armstead have been mentioned as potential sources of cap relief, but until those changes are made, Miami will have a hard time competing for big-name free agents. And speaking of big names, let's get into some of the rumors and reports coming out of ESPN. There's some conflicting news here, some of it promising, some of it frustrating. Let's start with the bad news. The Dolphins were reportedly interested in Kansas City Chiefs offensive lineman Trey Smith, who was listed by ESPN as the only Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman available in free agency. He's an absolute beast. For years as a starter, top 10 rankings from Pro Football Focus each season, and a perfect fit for Miami's zone-run blocking scheme. He's everything you'd want in a guard for this team. But here's the problem: his expected price tag is absolutely outrageous. ESPN projects that Trey Smith could command around $24 million per season in free agency. That's a jaw-dropping number, especially when you consider that last offseason, Robert Hunt signed the richest contract ever for an offensive guard, 5 years, $100 million with the Carolina Panthers. If Smith gets $24 million per year, that shatters Hunt's deal by a wide margin, and unfortunately for Miami, that means they're almost certainly out of the running. Let's be real here. When you've got teams like the New England Patriots and Chicago Bears with over $100 million in cap space, Miami simply cannot afford to get into a bidding war. Could they make a call to Smith's agent? Maybe. But as soon as the agent says, "We're looking for $24 million per year," that conversation is over. It's frustrating because Smith would be an incredible fit, but financially, it's just not realistic. So, that's the bad news. But there's good news too, and Dolphins fans should pay attention to this. ESPN also broke down a second tier of free agent guards, guys labeled as capable starters. This is where things start to get interesting because while Miami can't afford a Pro Bowl level guy like Trey Smith, they can absolutely target players from this group. Let's look at the names on this list: Aaron Banks, Mekhi Becton, Will Hernandez, Patrick McCrary, and Kevin Zeitler. These are all solid, reliable starters, and here's the best part: their expected contract values range from just $9 million to $15 million per season. That is a game changer for Miami. Think about it. If you can get a guy like Banks or Becton for around $10 to $12 million per year, that opens up a lot of possibilities. Miami could sign one solid free agent starter, then use the draft to find another long-term option. Or they could go after two of these mid-tier free agents and solidify both guard spots without breaking the bank. This is why ESPN's projections actually benefit Miami. Instead of having to throw all their money at one guy, they can be strategic. Maybe you sign a guy like Mekhi Becton on a 2-year, $24 million deal, $12 million per season. Then, you grab another capable veteran on a short-term deal and draft an interior lineman in the second or third round. Suddenly, you've got a complete offensive line without putting yourself in financial trouble. But it gets even better. There's another tier of linemen that ESPN labeled as borderline starters or high-end backups. This is where Miami could really find value. Will Fries and James Daniels were two names that stood out, and honestly, it's a little surprising to see them ranked so low. Yes, both players had injuries last season, but when healthy, they've been far better than just borderline starters. Let's take Will Fries, for example. He's just 26 years old and was starting to put things together before his injury. If Miami could land him on a 3-year, $20 million deal, that would be an absolute steal. Same with James Daniels. Yes, he's coming off an Achilles injury, but if he can be had on a 1-year, $5 to $6 million prove-it deal, that's a move that makes perfect sense. And here's why this is all so encouraging. These guys fit exactly what Miami is looking for. The Dolphins run a zone blocking scheme, and the 4 free agents that stand out, Aaron Banks, Mekhi Becton, Will Fries, and James Daniels, are all elite in that system. ESPN's data backs this up. Despite playing only about 100 snaps each last season due to injuries, Banks and Becton ranked first and second in zone run blocking efficiency according to Pro Football Focus. That is exactly what Miami needs. So, here's the bottom line. While missing out on Trey Smith is disappointing, the Dolphins are actually in a great position to land multiple solid free agents at reasonable prices. If Chris Grier plays this right, Miami could enter the 2024 season with a starting offensive line featuring Armstead, Banks, Brewer, Fries, and Austin Jackson, with some solid depth behind them. That would be a massive upgrade over what we saw last season, all while keeping the team's finances in check. The key now is execution. Chris Grier has to make the right moves, create some cap space, and get these deals done. But if the ESPN projections hold true, Miami has a real opportunity to fix its biggest weakness without overspending. So, Dolphins fans, now it's your turn. What do you think? Should Miami target one big-name free agent, or would you rather see them go after 2 mid-tier guys to fill both guard spots? Do you think Will Fries and James Daniels are being undervalued, or should Miami focus on someone else? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what you guys think. And as always, stay tuned, because when the Dolphins start making moves, we'll be breaking it all down for you right here. Now that we've broken down the potential free agent targets and what Miami can realistically afford, let's dive deeper into how these moves could impact the Dolphins' overall roster and strategy heading into the 2024 season. The offensive line isn't just a standalone issue, it affects the entire team, from Tua Tagovailoa's performance to the success of the running game, and even the defense in an indirect way. Let's explore what these potential signings mean for Miami's offensive philosophy and long-term success. First, let's talk about the ripple effect on Tua Tagovailoa. Everyone knows that Tua is at his best when he has a clean pocket. When he's protected, he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. But when he's pressured, that's when things start to fall apart. If the Dolphins can solidify the interior of the offensive line, it completely changes how this offense operates. Think back to last season, Miami's offensive line struggled in key moments, especially when injuries piled up. Yes, the Dolphins have one of the fastest and most explosive offenses in the league with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but if Tua doesn't have time to throw, it doesn't matter how fast your receivers are. The Kansas City Chiefs exposed this in the playoffs. The moment Miami's offensive line started to break down, the offense stalled. This is exactly why the Dolphins can't afford to take a half measure when it comes to upgrading the offensive line.